welcome back to the Strange Scaffold podcast, a podcast where we talk about strange Scaffold games. I'm Dracula Stan 69.
And I'm the guy with all the guns.
We're talking this week about the newest game from Strange Scaffold, I Am Your Beast. So Xalavier Nelson Jr., I guess director of Strange Scaffold games, seems to be, continuing to put out a game every time we check and see what has just happened.
This is a strategy I support.
I love it. I love it. And these are full-ass games. Like this is quite a cool game in my opinion. So we've talked about El Paso elsewhere. I think many of us huge fans of that. At least I certainly was. We regrettably played click holding recently. That was also very interesting. But if you'd like to wash your mouth out after your deep
eyes,
draft of click holding, maybe you'd like some more boomer shootery stuff. Yeah.
This one is cool. I mean, I guess I would not have if I weren't aware of it mainly through you and our Discord. I would not have straight up guessed that this was the click holding guy. But
it definitely does have
not a lot of shared
things
DNA
in common with El Paso elsewhere.
Yeah.
But Xalavier Nelson Jr., his work overall has been pretty varied. I mean, you can go back and look a couple of years ago. They put out an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. He's worked with a bunch of other developers. He has this game I keep meaning to check out called Sunshine Shuffle. That's about a bunch of cute animal mascots on a boat playing poker. But it's also like they're considering a premeditated murder at the same time.
Oh,
so interesting, varied stuff.
Cozy gaming.
Yeah, cozy, very cozy. However, so El Paso elsewhere at the time, I definitely likened it to a boomer shooter. This is maybe even more so because it is first person. So unlike El Paso elsewhere, a game where you were playing in third person with slow-mo dives a la what's the dude's name? That Remedy game? Max Payne.
Yeah.
It had that Max Payne, third person slow-mo vibe. There is definitely no slow-mo.
No.
There are absolutely no difficulty options that I could find. This game just wants you to get good.
The difficulty options are like, what grade are you willing to accept before you continue to the next level?
Yes.
If you are like me and you feel like C's will get you the degrees, then you're mostly good on this game, although it will force you to go back and get a few A's every now and then.
Yeah, so
let's talk about the structure of the game.
Yeah, structure, right. So and I'll put out there first before we get too far into it, I've not finished this one because it is much harder.
It's a tough one.
I had a difficult time finishing El Paso elsewhere. I really, really enjoyed it. I pushed through, played the whole thing. This is a fairly short game, but I have not finished it because it gets quite hard at the end.
Yeah, this is a game that I think it's going to really appeal to people who enjoy the pure first person shooter experience, because this is a FPS with just a really focused design that just doesn't throw a lot of extraneous stuff at you. Just from the fact that it does have a story, but that story is presented in an incredibly sparse and spare sort of way. What it does have is really interesting, really tight little level designs that want you to go fast through these levels, most of them. There's a variety of different objectives and things like that, but for the most part, you are running through these levels and just laying waste to tons of identical winterized soldier guys. And I mean, it's if you really just like first person shooter action, this game is going to, I think, be very, very satisfying for you, and the kind of thing that you can play in quick bursts and kind of drop into. I would say we covered Neon White a while back. This is really, in terms of its gameplay, I would compare it pretty closely to something like Neon White. Neon White does a lot of really bizarre stuff with the level design and things like that, though. This one is just killing guys in a wintry forest, and that is pretty much it. The cool thing about it, though, is just how fluid everything is. There's often challenges in every level that tell you you were going to get extra points on the grade at the end if you go for all headshots, and those levels are designed as just headshot shooting galleries. There's so many different ways that you can kill the enemies in this game. You can jump on them like Mario. You can run up to them and kick them and knock them down and stomp their heads in. There's a reasonable but not overwhelming variety of weapons, just very, very distinctive. Like, there's the pistol, there's the shotgun, the assault rifle, the sniper rifle. And every level is so small and contained. Like, I don't think that I saw a target time on this that was more than like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Super tiny levels.
Mm-hmm. It does have a story. And honestly, what made me most interested in playing this before I saw that it was another Xalavier Nelson Jr. joint, and I think I just sort of play all of his games now, and that's what we do. But before I realized that, somebody posted the trailer for this in our Discord, and I just went and watched it without looking at the page. And what was interesting to me was okay, I was drawn in by it. Looks like fun combat, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a fun shooter, but it also was telling a story. It's like a narrative. It seemed, at least at first, like a narrative focused boomer shooter, which you don't see a lot. A lot of there's been such a resurgence of boomer shooters. This sort of genre of throwback shooters with very fast action, and they're all really fun. I really enjoy that approach, but mostly they're pretty story light. And this one had sort of codec conversations. It has constant chatter. I think actually it isn't that different in structure, at least it's storytelling, from El Paso Elsewhere. El Paso Elsewhere alternated, fast action levels with short cutscenes. Here, the cutscenes are not even animated. Mm-hmm. They are, it's text on screen conversations. They're fully voiced, but it's kind of mostly radio chatter between the main character and these invading, military industrial douchebags. The story, though, is straight up, John Wick meets Rambo. You're a guy who seems to have a history with some sort of, 3-letter name agency.
Yeah.
You've retired to the wilderness, I guess. This is your...
He now lives in a series of hatches in the side of a mountain. Yes.
Exactly. Like you do when you escape from the military industrial
complex. He lives in a network of tunnels.
Yeah, but this is your home. These trees and tunnels.
The frame story seems to be guy whose name I don't know, who I will refer to as, let's say, Juan Jick, has
Alphonse Harding is the name of the main character.
Alphonse, wow, fancy. So he has kind of hidden himself away here. They want him to come back for one last job, and he says, "That's what you said 3 one last jobs ago." And they said, "You can't say no." And he said, "Try me." And they said, "Hey, I'm going to send hundreds of people to try to kill you, and helicopters." And everything everything we can throw at you. And he just says, "Well, okay, I guess we're going to kill everyone." And that's about the story. I think, like you said, the story is not in the levels. There's a little tiny bit of chatter from the enemies, occasionally. But most of what you hear the enemies say in the game is stuff like, "He's climbing," or "He's got a shotgun." The story in this, I liked the voice acting a lot.
Xalavier Nelson Jr. once again doing the voice of the main character in his own game.
But
great voice.
He's great. He needs to keep doing these because he's very good at it. I wish that he would give us a little bit more integration between story and level. Like the radio chatter, to me, it kind of feels like that could happen during the level, right? Instead, it's a separate.
I think the problem is
option.
that this game is so focused on being like a score. If you were to just straight up play through every one of these and never fail, you could finish this game in an hour. It's very short, but you can't do that because it's very hard. So you're intended to be playing through these levels multiple times, probably because you're not going to get through it.
That's the thing. The levels are actually shorter than the story chatter bits if you do them properly.
Yeah, but you're not gonna. I would have to play through most of these levels 4 or 5 and sometimes more times before I would get 2 or 3 times if I just wanted to complete the objective within the time allotted. But then you get a D grade and you're like, well,
the first one is for fun. You need to know where the enemy. First time you go through, you learn where the enemies are. You learn what the like routes are. You know, the second time through, you try a strategy and find out it doesn't work. Like the fifth time through, you've like optimized the hell out of your run, and you got a little lucky with some of your shots, and you get through.
Mm-hmm. And it alternates, you know, gameplay level, story chapter, you know, or, you know, cutscene, I guess you'd call them, back and forth, you know, one after the other. I think there's something over 20 something levels.
Yeah, it's like 25.
Yeah, I did not get anywhere near the end of this game because there are certain sort of like hurdles. About early mid game, there's a point where it asks you to have gotten an A rank on at least 2 of the previous levels. Mm-hmm. So I had to go back and replay a couple of different levels to improve.
It does that every so often.
Yeah. And I know that I didn't get this far, but I know that before you can reach the end game, you have to have gotten an S rank on at least one level, which seems unreasonable to me. Like I can't, like
I don't know. You could do that on like the first level,
the easiest level 1, and I still had quite some difficulty getting an A rank on that. And really, to get an S rank, we're talking about like no false moves, 0. You know,
you get a significant bonus for doing like a lot of the different specialty kills, and also every level has. I think this is designed for a little bit of replayability here to get those higher ranks, because you get bonuses, I believe, from the challenges, right? So every level will have like one unlocked challenge, and it'll be something like get all headshots or kill 5 people with bees, stuff like that.
I always love games that let you drop a beehive on a bad guy.
Who doesn't love environmental
such a good
kills?
Trope.
But and I didn't actually get any of these to unlock, but there are also secondary unlockable challenges. So I'm guessing that if you're going to go for the S rank, you need to unlock those and maybe flawlessly pull it off, like getting all the challenges. Once you have that, I think so you get a significant bonus from all those challenges. So it's not just like, you know, find the quickest way through the level and shoot everybody in the head, although most of the levels can be accomplished that way.
Yeah. Let's see.
I like that it has a variety of objectives. Not every level is like go in and kill everyone. There are some levels that are like a wave-based thing where, you know, you just have to kill everyone and then kill everyone and then kill everyone.
Those are my favorite. I prefer that style of like wave-based, you know, survive multiple waves of enemies as opposed to the like time attack.
Yeah, like, I like the main structure you see is kind of in and out, right? You go in, kill everyone, and then before the time runs out, get to an extraction hatch. Or some of my favorite ones, there's no requirement to kill anyone. You just have to activate 3 laptops and then escape, or things like that. And those are fun because you really can kind of parkour your way through the level. Only shooting the ones that are between you and the next laptop.
I like that too, because there are a lot of health pickups in the game. There's 2 kinds. There's like these health, like, you know, health packs that look very traditional, like, you know, box with a plus sign on it. But there's also a certain type of shrub that you can go up to. And I love the image of him like sprinting full speed by and just reaching out a hand,
eating a juvenile pine tree,
leaves, and I don't know, making a poultice instantaneously.
Yeah, it says he's making a poultice, but I mean, the only difference between these 2 things, apart from their appearances, I think the health packs like fill your HP bar up immediately, and the poultices like do it over the period of like a second or 2. But I mean, I actually do like that this game does have you kind of managing your health as a resource for some of it. You know, it's not just a matter of like you have to camp and shoot people as they come around corners. And, you know, that's usually a boring way to play this kind of game, and they incentivize you to not do that by like making health something you can pick up if you just keep moving, and by putting a timer on everything.
Visually, the game is definitely a little bit going for a retro aesthetic, but I think much less so than El Paso elsewhere. Like, this has, you know, pretty wide open spaces with, you know, there's mountains in the background. There's quite a lot of detail to the environment, even though it's rendered in a little bit of a low poly style. And then like color scheme wise, it just pops, you know, like explosions are red and yellow.
Lots of snow helps, you know, things stand out nicely against the white.
Yeah. It just has, I think it has kind of a nice visual like pop to it. Although it does
better
sort
look
of
good because the entire game has one look. There are like the biggest difference that you get in levels is that there's like daytime and nighttime, but you're going to see the same pine tree a billion times in this, and like the same tent is going to appear in every level. The same hatch is going to appear in every level. There, you know, that's not actually a huge downside for me, especially on something so short, because, you know, I think if it were longer, maybe that would be something you'd get tired of. But the good thing about it is all reads really clear. Like, you know, you're moving fast through this level and you can see everything, and you know, okay, there's a tent. I know there's probably a gun or a pickup over there, stuff like that.
One plot element that I did really like is that, you know, because there's all this radio chatter, the game has to continually find ways to make, you know, person talking to other person on the radio interesting or funny. And so they'll introduce these different situations with the enemy characters. And Alphonse Harding has this kind of like affable, like he's not growling into the mic most of the time. You know, it's not like, I am gonna come kill you and everyone you've ever known. You get a little bit of that with the main bad guy, the general or whatever his name is. I've forgotten it now.
Birkin.
Thank you. But most of the time he'll often talk to like other random people, and there, like, for example, there's this one guy who's like a member of that enemy squad who realizes that you're listening to the comms traffic and offers to give you information about the enemy in exchange for please don't kill me if you happen to come across one of these soldiers wearing a pink mitten, please don't kill that one. And then he'll explain to you, it's my daughter's mitten. She knitted it for me. He's trying to humanize himself. And finally, you do make a deal with this guy, and he continues to feed you information throughout the game. But also, there's just like really funny moments where
that mitten guy, I was expecting him to show up in the next level, but I don't think I saw him. I hope I didn't kill him too quick to notice the mitten. But
I don't think so. I think it may just be just an element of the plot. I don't think it's like a mechanical thing where you're like keeping an eye out for dudes with pink mittens. I didn't see any. It's also possible that I killed him too, if that's the case, or maybe he just hasn't shown up yet. Because again, haven't finished it because it's very hard. I'm still plucking my way through it, but I have a feeling that I'm not going to make it to the end of this one, despite its short length, because things like knowing, for example, that I need to be able to get an S rank on at least one level, like that's probably not impossible, but I might run out of steam before then, because this is definitely it's like a really cool game, and I was enjoying my time with it, but I didn't find it quite as obsessive compulsive as El Paso Elsewhere. I just really, really, really dug that game a lot. And a lot of it was that I just got very, very involved in the story and absolutely desperately wanted to see the next chapter. And I enjoyed the circle strafing, slow-mo, etc. Because this has no slow-mo and is sometimes really quite brutal in the situations it throws you into. I don't know, man. I think it just went a little too hard for me. But, probably other folks are better shooter persons than I am.
Yeah, I think this is one for the real shooter fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mostly am. I think I was pretty all in on this. I actually probably will keep playing it, although I don't know if I will finish it. I think that's not entirely in my hands. It's probably up to my reaction speed. But the thing that probably will have me coming back to it is, first off, the little levels. Like, these tiny little sandbox levels are it's like I said, 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds is the bar for you to want to maybe try and play a level of this game. The action, it is a little bit cartoony in a good way. Like, it's very clear, little big long white streaky lines of bullets flying around your head and stuff. But it scratches a little bit of the itch that Super Hot, the most innovative shooter of all time, or that I've played in years, has for you, because you're doing stuff that's very super mega, super assassin type stuff. Like, you're throwing you empty your gun and you throw it, and if you hit the guy with the gun, that you threw through the air, his gun is always going to fly towards you so you can grab it out of the air and kill the next two guys. Like it is really super fun. And when you have that outside of the context of something like Super Hot, where you are slowing down time, it just makes you feel even more like of a badass. I often like games where you do kind of try things a few times and try and get your, to try to find the perfect route through something. But that does often walk like a fine line of frustration for me. Like if I feel like my fingers can't go fast enough, then I'll eventually end up putting it down.
God help you if you try to play this game when you are tired.
Yeah, don't do that.
I was not doing well at all. I had to play this game, awake during the day in order to make progress.
I don't have that much else to say on the subject of this game because I guess it's part of its beauty is in its simplicity. And if you're listening to this, I'm sure already have an idea of whether this kind of game is for you. It's got a great pedigree. The developer is great. As a voice actor, he's also still super satisfying. So I will probably say let's leave it, but I want to leave with some of the YouTube comments that I found while researching this game that made me laugh really, really hard. So these are comments from people who are clearly enjoying the game. One says, "Birkin, Harding is going to tear you a new ass. That and every person you send after him, get a lot of boxes ready because there's going to be a body count."
I mean,
yes, I agree.
Cool,
Cameron Bauman 2090. My favorite comment is this one here. What's a little bit scary is the fact that while this is highly unlikely, there actually could be theoretically a kind of warrior soldier agent out there like this again. Highly unlikely, basically chances of zero, the history of our reality. Even though it really is unlikely, couldn't produce such a warrior. What is terrifying about that is when they decide to play their own game. I agree, David Collins, 8076. Thank you for your thoughts on this game.
We're living in a simulation, man. All of those were written by AI. Like, I know it. Yeah, good game. I think pretty solid. If you want to check this out, it is on Steam for $20. There's a launch sale for 10% off, so you can get it for 18 right now. But, I think that's neither of us got to the end of this, so we can't report our times. But what's the estimated amount of time on this? About 4 hours. I looked this up on how long to beat, and it does not have enough reports now. The only report says 1 hour, which is incorrect. That's not unless you are some kind of maniac.
If you a speed run for this is probably a little under an hour, is my guess.
Yeah, I think like a true speed run for this would be like nothing, but realistic time for a human being to play this is probably, I would guess, 7 or 8 hours total if you're playing at the rate that I've been playing at. But maybe a lot less if you're better than me.
Yeah, even less if you quit. And one final thing I guess I'm thinking about, keeps rattling around in my head here, is I think he really nails the feel of the weapons. There's not that many different weapons in the game, but one of the things that I will highlight is there's a pistol in the game that feels like it has some kind of head magnetism to it. You know what I mean? Like you can pull out the assault rifle and shoot at somebody, and at the same distance you'll land like a couple of body shots, a headshot. Eventually that'll take them out. But with the pistol, it just kind of goes right for the head in a way that's like feels apropos for the kind of gameplay they're trying to create. Just, I think they nailed a lot of the gameplay feel for that. The shotgun feels shockingly weak compared to the pistol, which I like.
Yeah, although I honestly had a lot of fun using the shotgun in this. You can do like aim down sights on most of the guns.
That's a funny thing about that. They made the aim down sights on all of these is that silly movie star aim where they like tilt the gun at a 45-degree angle.
Yes. I had fun doing that. I really liked using the shotgun in this. When there was a level where there were a bunch of shotgun guys, I liked the rhythm of like, boom, 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 grab the next guy's gun, boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. And it was very fun for me. But yeah, like all the guns were pretty good, and it definitely nails some of that feel. I I think if you liked El Paso Elsewhere, I think this is a good bet for you too, and especially if you just like the sort of 90s to 2000s era of shooters, this is probably also a good bet for you. And again, it's still just out on Steam. There's no console port of this. I think this is probably going to be a difficult game to tune for a controller. It does provide you with things like a quick turn button, and that could be helpful on a controller. But this one, it feels like a mouse and keyboard game to me because it is so obviously first person games, at least in my experience, I tend to prefer them mouse and keyboard. But this one, I think it requires a little bit more precision and like quick turns than you'd probably be able to easily do on a gamepad, or they just have to retune all of the expected times. But yeah, I would recommend this. I did check; it does run just fine on the Steam Deck, but again, I think you need a mouse and keyboard. I didn't play it there, but it did run. So if you're wanting to give it a try there, you can.
All right. Do you think we have time for making us happy this week?
I suspect we do. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
So this week, I read The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman.
I've been meaning to check that out. How was it?
It was fantastic. I am a great fan of fantasy, and Lev Grossman's series, The Magicians, was really fantastic. I really enjoyed that. That was a series that kind of brought...
I love the books. Don't watch the show.
Actually, I totally loved the show.
Really?
Yeah. I think, in fact... I think that the show probably has a lot more broad appeal than the books do. Quentin in the not to devolve off of The Bright Sword, Quentin in the books is much more unlikable than Quentin in the show. So if that was the draw for you, then sorry. But
it kind of was. What drew me to the Magician's books is that it's a Harry Potter pastiche that read like literary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It had an actually interesting main character. I thought it had good prose. It read it was more interesting to read than, it was not written like a YA or something. And yet it was still on the tropes of I'm going to school to learn to do magical spells.
Yeah. And he goes to Narnia basically. And,
so
that's exactly what I liked about it too. I like that about the show as well. I think the show kind of expanded the world a little bit in some ways that I liked, some ways that I didn't. I really liked what the show did with the character of Julia. But that's for another time. I'll talk about that later. This book just came out. It came out earlier in the summer, and July, and it's a Arthurian epic. I love fantasy, but I haven't read a lot of the Arthurian fantasy, right? So some of this was kind of new to me, but even maybe even especially if you're a fan of that kind of fiction, what was the name of the big one? The Once and Future King is maybe... Anyway, if that appeals to you, then this is really, really good. So the story follows a young knight named Colum, who is on his way to Camelot to kind of compete for a place at the Round Table, wants to be a part of the center of the world, Camelot. In fact, he has stolen some armor in order to get there and to qualify. And upon arrival, he is told King Arthur died 2 weeks ago. And the Round Table was decimated. Only a small number of knights are still alive. And it's the also ran ones, none of the big names, And what the book does that's, I think, really interesting is it kind of alternates chapters between Column's story, where he and the remaining knights kind of are trying to figure out what to do about the problem of succession in England, and the story of Arthur and vignettes from the lives of all of the backstories of all these knights. There's another character named Nimue who was Merlin's apprentice. Is a female wizard who has learned from Merlin, and she's kind of the other main character love interest for Colum. It's the most fun things about this book really are, first and foremost, it's a very different sort of take on King Arthur. There's, it has this sort of, he is not to spoil anything, he's kind of a character in it. You get a lot of flashbacks and things like that to things like the famous quest for the Holy Grail. And you're kind of looking back at this age of magic as it is kind of ending. There's a lot of conflict between the kind of age of magic and Christianity, and like not so you had the kind of the fairies is the big kind of element that was then kind of taken over and supplanted by the Christians, and now with the fall of Camelot, it feels as if like the God is leaving England as well, and like what's going to be left after that is a big part of the plot. You know, Morgan Le Fay is back and is saying like, well, hey, the time for the fairies to come back, but there's a lot of different things going on in the story there. There are a lot of really interesting knights of the Round Table that I had never heard of that get interesting kind of stories and backgrounds. The whole book is doing something really interesting with time, where so like stories of King Arthur are like King Arthur as a character is, you know, when we think of him, we're thinking of like the Knights of the Round Table. We're thinking of knights in armor. We're thinking of, you know, the pageantry of a jousting tournament and things like that. The stories of King Arthur really start like ages before that, before armor could possibly have been used, right? And basically in a pre-Christian England. And so there are all these elements that are in the story of this book that it's almost as if there's 1,000 years of history happening all at once in the book. You know, there's a character who's from Baghdad that, you know, couldn't possibly be in England at this time. But what time even is it, right? That's kind of an interesting part of the story, and the way it's told there is really fun. And then the other thing that I really love about it is just how bombastic and showy everything is. Like the magic that is in this book is like enormous. Like angels, fairies, giants, like all of that, right? Flying boats, magic swords, like super. And so you have this like super bombastic, over the top, like extremely magical, you know, everything's super flashy, but it's also this world where the kind of magic is dying or being left behind. And so it's a really fun way of kind of writing that kind of story. Like you said, the prose, Lev Grossman is, I think, a great writer. I think the character of Colum is 1,000% more likable than Q was. So I don't know if what you really liked was having a main character you could hate. I'm sorry, but there are plenty of hateable characters in this. So yeah, totally recommend it. Very much worth picking up.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that, because I definitely have that on my list as a, like, you know, read it soon kind of thing. Seemed right up my alley, so definitely going to check that out. My thing is very quick, but it's, I think, something, Shane, you know about already. But my big project this week, I'm only really happy when I've got something to tinker with, right? And, you know, I've talked many times on this show about like, hey, I got this new thing and I've been spending a lot of time messing with it. Isn't that cool? And sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's not. But my big project of the last few couple of weeks, I guess, has been that Shane gave me a long time ago, like a couple of years ago, as I think Christmas or birthday present, I think
I just bought it out of nowhere. I don't remember. I think I just found a deal on it and I was like, Raygan would like this. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where like, I did like it, but I wasn't really able to use it for anything because, you know, I'm a CRT guy. I love playing retro games on CRTs.
That's cathode ray tube for you, yes, Republicans.
Old box TVs. Oh yes, exactly. Thank you. And I have a lot of them. And this one like looks cool because it's clear, because in case you're not aware, in the US prison system and maybe elsewhere in the world as well, there are often rules about what sorts of electronics and other devices they can have in the prison, because they don't want people hiding contraband inside them. And back in the days of CRT tube TVs, those were a really good place to hide stuff, because those things are actually mostly empty air for safety reasons. And so they had specific models of tube TVs, only really a handful of models over the years, including this RCA one that Shane gave me, that were made entirely with clear plastic shells, perfectly clear so you can see all of the internal components, which makes them really cool to look at, because CRTs are kind of amazing inside. They're, you know, little technical marvels.
Yeah, that's what made me want to pick it up, because it's if you remember those, like the Visible Man, where you see the little plastic guy and you can see all of his organs inside. It's the TV version of that. You can see the cathode ray tube, you can see all the boards, you can see where the wire is spooled around for the magnetron, I think it's called. It's
no, I think that's a microwave.
That's a microwave.
Magnetrons are in microwaves.
Well, whatever it is, you can see all the bits. Maybe you should put some labels on the inside.
You're thinking of the deflection yolk, I think.
Obviously, I'm thinking of the deflection yolk. So, if you want to really see that yolk, then this is the thing.
Anyway, it's a great gift, but it mostly just sort of sat on a shelf because it was, like you're not expecting like super high quality in the prison system. It was RF only. It was only going to take antenna input or cable input from certain types of cable systems. And so that made it really inconvenient to hook up almost anything that I would normally hook up to a CRT to it. And I really just sort of played around with it and then sat it on a shelf to look at it and have it look pretty. And then a few weeks ago, a YouTuber that I follow had a video about this exact same model and showed that it can be modded to allow component input, because this was a kind of a late model CRT. And so it was already after the period when they had mandated that all TVs in the US had to have digital TV tuner cards. And this thing was sort of almost retrofitted with a digital TV tuner card. So it had the main board of the CRT, but it also had this smaller sort of daughter board that was the tuner card. And internally, it was connected over an internal component input, like the, red, we didn't have RGB here, but it's the like red, green, the like 3 video plug one that you have on, some very nice CRTs from the late 2000s, as well as like early HD TVs. And that's great because that means you get great RGB, nice video into the thing. So I did that mod. It was it was pretty easy because you just had to, it did require some nice tools because you had to be able to like work on a CRT, which can be dangerous. So be careful out there. And, had to be able to discharge the CRT's tube, had to be able to desolder that card from the main card, which I have a desoldering gun. Always love to get a chance to use it. So did that and then soldered in a new input, which I happened to have some pieces lying around that had the right, inputs. And it worked out great. Really easy mod as these things are considered. And then because I was having so much fun doing
makes
that,
sense. This was getting it ready for a prison was kind of a mod. It's kind of ironic because like you were basically undoing what was done to this thing.
Yeah, theoretically, like it's the same as some other RCA models from that era that did have proper inputs. But they didn't just remove that input; they removed all the components on the main board related to it, and so it wouldn't have been possible to just solder it in place where the original component was. But you could kind of piggyback on this alternate option, so that it still worked out fine. And anyway, I got carried away and decided I was going to have some other clear stuff to connect to it. So I found out you can get a pretty decent clear SNES shell, or in my case, Super Famicom shell, for not that much money on AliExpress. So I now have and I did a nice recapped, a Super Famicom and found a clear controller for it. And now I've got a full prison gaming setup. And if I ever go to prison, I'll have all the clear stuff I would need.
Except they won't let you bring your cartridges in because those are opaque plastic. So
yeah,
you got to find a clear cartridge case.
Yeah, they do make those. That was something I considered. I was like, maybe I need to start get a clear cartridge case so I can have a clear game to go in the top. Might be the next thing. Anyway, it's been a fun project, and if you're curious and want to see it, I'll have some photos on my like Blue Sky account or maybe in the Discord. Come join us on the Discord. I posted a couple there. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. Apologies if you're hearing a yard guy outside my window right now. My neighbor decided now was the time to have someone mow the yard. We usually record in the evenings when this isn't an issue, so hopefully this isn't picking up too much on my microphone, but it is very loud for me right now, so I'll go ahead and do the outro. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at shortgame.fm, which is the page that has all of the links to all of our stuff, including all of our social media accounts. You can find my Blue Sky from there, for example. All of the various different podcast platforms where our show appears. Makes it easy to go to all of them if you want and leave reviews. We don't talk about that every time, but if you haven't please do leave us a review or comments on whatever podcast platform you like to use. It helps people find the show, or so we're told. But it also, we read all of those, and it always makes us feel nice. We also are a listener-supported show on Patreon. And again, shortgame.fm or patreon.com/theshortgame will get you there. Everyone who supports the show gets instant access to our Discord community, which is where we talk about the show, plan episodes. It's where we are talking right now about the games of IFComp 2024, which we'll be returning to again shortly. So having a lot of fun talking about those. It's where our listeners tell me, hey, that game is actually the new thing from Strange Scaffold. You probably ought to pay attention to it because I know you like those. Like, thank you, listeners, for doing that. Very much appreciated. And it's just a great place to hang out online. It's the kind of online community that's like not so busy that it's overwhelming. It's welcoming to new people. It's not going to overwhelm you with 100,000 posts a day, but it's also, active enough that there's something to talk about there if you want to come join us. Great online hang. So thanks again to our listeners and patrons there. And yeah, I'm Raygan Kelly.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And thanks once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.